Hi, everyone. My name is Philip Miatkowski, and I'm the Director of Research at Transportation Alternatives. For those that are not familiar with TA, we've been around for 50 years and are a New York City-based nonprofit advocacy group whose mission is to reclaim New York City from cars in order to transform our streets into safe, sustainable, equitable places to walk, bike, take transit, gather, and thrive. Today, I'll be presenting on a really exciting new tool called Spatial Equity NYC. This is one of my favorite things to do. I love to talk about and share this really exciting website. So just a quick overview of what we'll cover today. We'll just do a short introduction, a very short video, an overview of spatial equity, key findings, and then my most favorite part, a live demo. We'll briefly discuss what's coming next for versions 2.0 and 3.0, and then we'll take questions at the end. So this is just a quick 90-second video just to introduce us to the website. Great, so what is spatial equity? Spatial equity is a way to understand how public space, whether it's our streets, our sidewalks, our green spaces, is distributed, how they're restricted, how it's used and made unusable, and the different outcomes that result for different communities. Public health, environmental resilience, and mobility are all affected by how we use public space. And our infrastructure has the capacity to perpetuate or disrupt these inequities. Public space can be used in ways that are uplifting, such as a bus lane that brings workers home to their families faster, or a new pocket of parkland that opens up and boosts mental and physical health. But public space can also be used in ways that are devastating, such as highways that divide communities and exacerbate flooding, excess heat, air pollutants, burdening residents with the realities of lifelong illness and the threat of traffic violence. And deciding who gets access is a legacy of racist and classist planning over the years. It's oftentimes associated with Robert Moses, but it has continued to the present day. So by examining how policy decisions define the use of public space, the burdens or benefits that those decisions may confer, and how those decisions differ across communities, we can map spatial equity and how it changes who lives in our neighborhood and the relative power, access, and resources as compared to their neighbors. So some of you may have heard of our overarching campaign called 25 by 25. This is TA's challenge to New York's leaders to convert 25% of our space dedicated to cars back to people. And that charge is because we all know the impact that shifting from a car-centric city to a more sustainable, green, and public transit-oriented city has for our communities. As a result, we've been endorsed by over 200 organizations for this 25 by 25 campaign. So Spatial Equity NYC is a next logical step within that campaign. and it provides information that's a backbone to understanding the urgency of this charge. So before I get into Spatial Equity NYC, I just, for those less familiar with our issues, I want to discuss who gets space on New York City streets. So we know that the majority of New York City residents don't own a car. And in fact, only 30% of all trips, so grocery store, going to the doctors, going to work, commuting, etc., only 30% of trips are made by car. But part of our 25 by 25 campaign was we calculated how our streets are distributed, how that space is distributed. And we found that 76% of our space is dedicated to either moving or storing via parking on our streets for vehicles. And then only 24% of space is dedicated for people. 23% of that is for sidewalks, and less than 1% is for bike lanes, bus lanes, and open streets combined. We also did polling to show widespread support among New York City voters. So we specifically asked, would you support these initiatives? And we were really upfront. We said that there would be less space for cars. There would be fewer travel lanes and fewer parking spots. We asked that in the question. We made sure that there's only a limited amount of space between our buildings. So something has to give. And we saw widespread support for a lot of these issues. And we see this across polling from different organizations and different polling firms. DOT's own polling shows only 13% of New Yorkers are opposed to bike lanes, and only 11% are opposed to bus lanes. So how did Spatial Equity NYC come about? It actually started in a meeting with a council member. So I was in that meeting, and the council member was he was hesitating on a major redesign of a street in his district. At one point, the council member paused, and he realized that he, in the middle of making his argument for why he was opposed, he wasn't sure what percentage of residents didn't own a car. And neither did the staffers on the call either. And he wanted to guess. He guessed around 35 or 40% of residents don't own a car. I apologize for the siren. I do live in one of the loudest districts in the city, so we'll get to that data layer in a second. So he guessed that around 35 or 40% of his residents didn't own a car, when in fact it was actually closer to 7%. So that was sort of our aha moment. We realized that we really need to have better accessible, shareable data for policy decision makers, for the public, for advocates, for folks who work in the city level, because making a decision to restrict transit options in a district where nearly 70% of residents don't own a car is a disservice to those residents. And what kinds of better decisions could we be making for all of our communities if more people had access to this kind of data? So for the first release of Spatial Equity NYC, we selected 15 data sets, plus census data about race, ethnicity, poverty, commute mode, and vehicle ownership. All of these data layers on the right side are aggregated at the city council district and community board district scale to make it easier for users to take action. We also think that it's important to not talk about these issues in silos. What happens on our streets is extremely interconnected. And that's a huge goal of this website is to show how interconnected these issues are, because if you live in a community or in a district that has higher surface temperatures, that district probably also has fewer trees. And that district that has fewer trees probably also has higher asthma. And if you have higher asthma rates, you probably also have high air pollution rates. And if you have high air pollution rates, you probably also have higher traffic volume. With higher traffic volume, there's higher noise pollution. With higher noise pollution, there's higher injury rates. So all of these data layers are super interconnected. And some of you might already be asking, well, doesn't something like this already exist? We're definitely not the first website to map open data. However, when we started to think about the new tool we wanted to make, we realized that we were making something that doesn't exist yet. A lot of this data is mapped for the first time, especially on the city council level. But we also wanted something that brings in political geography, layers on demographics, presents data uniformly. We normalize the data. When you see the data layer talking about percentage of streets that have a bus lane, you can compare that directly to a different district, even if there is different mileage of streets in that district. So we see this website as a one-stop shop, and it's also solutions-oriented. So whenever we're talking about any of the data layers, there are also solutions, scalable solutions, immediately visible to the user as well. So many sites that use New York City Open Data already exist. So on the left here, we have Vision Zero View from DOT, which shows injuries and traffic fatalities that occur on our streets. On the right side is the tree equity score from the American Forest Society. And while these are really helpful, we've noticed that these websites stand in separate silos and they don't talk to each other. And a lot of these maps also just, look like population density maps. So the websites don't normalize that data. So for instance, on our website, when we talk about traffic fatalities or traffic injuries, we talk about it on a per capita basis. And these websites also very rarely present any policy solution. So that was also really important for us as an advocacy group, and we found huge success with that. Because it's also important to present all of these data layers together because, as I mentioned earlier, these issues are so intersectional and they are so interconnected. So we shouldn't be viewing them or even talking about them as if they were separate issues. So when we break down the inequity of public space, it shows us where critical components of healthy, thriving communities are missing. So who gets trees in New York City, or clean air, or benches, or parks. So I'll just a couple more slides before we get to the live demo, but we did an analysis with MIT on the city council level, and here's what we found. These statistics in the next couple slides are shouldn't be surprising to many of you, especially for those who live in New York City. But I think it's still important to talk about. So compared to districts where a majority of residents are white versus the districts where the majority of residents are people of color, the districts where the majority of residents are people of color have injury rates that are 58% higher. Those districts also have asthma rates that are 96% higher. They also have 64% fewer bike parking spaces and 57% fewer streets with bus lanes, and 83% fewer streets with protected bike lanes. So here are two maps that just show how inequitable the distribution of bike and bus lanes are in New York City. And I want to pause here for a moment and acknowledge that this tool is not meant to tell folks on the ground that their community has no bike lanes or that their community has high levels of asthma rates, because those folks already know that. They don't need a website to tell them that many of their loved ones and their friends have asthma. But what this tool is meant to do is to have a reliable, citable, linkable source to the city's own data, to visualize the data so that it's easier to understand, easier to use, and easier to relate your community to how other parts of the city are doing. Because even though you might know that asthma rates are really high in your community, to have that ability to say, based on the city's own data, my city council district or my community board ranks for the second worst asthma rate in the city is extremely powerful. So this website isn't meant to replace those powerful personalized stories. It's just meant to build on top of them and to arm advocates and electeds and agency staff to use the city's own data in a reliable and a usable way. So now I'll turn over to the live demo of the website. So for this this part here, I strongly recommend that you maximize this sharing screen as much as possible so that you can see there's a lot of hidden components or smaller features that I really want to point out. I'm actually even going to turn off my video so that there's one less distraction on your screen. And hopefully you can see the Spatial Equity website right now. Oh, wait, actually, great. Should be able to see the Spatial Equity website now. All right, so when you arrive to spatialequity.nyc, this is the landing page. The short 90-second video that we saw earlier is right here. And all of the data layers are divided either on, you can view them via a citywide scale or by community profiles. So I'll cover both sections, but for the first one, let's hop into the citywide data. And once again, all of the data layers are divided into these three main buckets: health, environment, and mobility. So we're going to click over to health, and let's click on noise pollution. So this is what the website looks like. If you were to click on any of those different data layers, it looks very similar to this. Right underneath your drop-down menu here, you're presented with a short paragraph chock full of citable linked research articles about why this issue is so pressing for New York. So this can be really helpful if you're prepping for a meeting, prepping for a community board meeting, trying to make your case for why, in this case, noise pollution is so important. In the middle here, you see a histogram, and right now we're on the city council view. You can see that here on the left side. So this maps all 51 city council districts from the quietest down here, with the shortest bars, to the loudest city council districts at the top here. You see the citywide average here at 54.8 decibels. And as you glide over each individual bar, you see that the city council district number changes, as does the average decibel noise for that particular district. You can also click on different bars if you want to compare them. And if you happen to forget who represents, in this case, Council District 4, you can click on the council district number here, and it'll bring you to the page for that district, which tells you who represents the district, what parts of the city it represents, what neighborhoods, etc. So the histogram view is also a great way to see how inequitable the worst performing and the best performing districts are. So if it's a gradual increase in the bars, then it's a less intense inequity. But for some of the data layers, you'll notice that there's a really sharp curve where the long bars only occur at the very end. If you want to view the data by borough, you can also click the Show Borough button here on the very bottom, and you get these candy cane colors here. So you see that the three loudest city council districts are all in Queens. That's the blue. Yellow is the Bronx. Brooklyn is green. And you can also you can staple as many of these districts as you'd like. You can also clear those pins. But this view here can be really helpful for looking at potential partners who to work with to introduce a bill, or who to invite to a workshop, because that might be a pressing issue. So if you're working already, let's say for someone in Council District 20, this is a great tool to just look, what is the district that's just louder, the two districts that are loudest right above it, and the one right below it, and you can see, maybe those are council members, or maybe that there are organizations within those neighborhoods that could partner with you, and you can make that case, hey, we're all in the top 3 loudest city council districts. And then on the right side here, you'll always be presented with 3 solutions to the problem whenever you're in this histogram view. And the solutions are scalable from the block level to the citywide level, also chock full of research and data points that are all linked. The data can also be viewed in a list form. like so. And I forgot to mention one other thing. This is a really important aspect here. Whenever you see this information icon, it tells you where that data is from. And you'll see that throughout the website. And this was a really important aspect of our website. Huge thanks. The overwhelming majority of these data layers are all from open data. So we really wanted to make it clear to the user that this is not TA or MIT pressing the scales behind the in the background on these numbers or making them up. This is coming from really reliable sources like the city's own open data portal. And when you click on that information icon, it'll bring you to the raw data. You'll be able to download it yourself if you want to double check our work. So at the top here, there are those three icons. This is the histogram view, the list view I already showed, and this globe icon here will map the data out. So once again, we're on the noise pollution data layer now. And the darker the color for any of the layers, the more of that item there is. So in this case, there's more noise with that darker purple color here. So as you glide over each individual city council district, you get information about the district number and how the district ranks among the 51 city council district. And also in this case, how loud that district is. So for District 43, it's great to know that the district ranks 15th out of 51 city council districts on noise. It sounds very loud, but that's the district-wide average. So what's really great about this website too is as you zoom in, you'll get more detail. So as you glide over district, we're still on City Council District 43, but you notice that the transportation noise pollution within the district is not equitably distributed. If you know this area at all, you notice that the louder and that dark color is closer to the highways. And the quieter parts of the district are further away from those busy streets. No surprise there. And then zooming back out, there's also this feature here where you can highlight the council districts if you want to immediately just visualize where the loudest districts are instead of floating on each one individually. You can click this and it gives you that visualization to show which districts are the 5 loudest. Great, so now I'm going to show community profiles. So this was viewing the data on the citywide scale. So via community profiles, there is this search function here. And within the search bar, you can type in, if you happen to know the district number, you can type that in. If you type in an exact address, that works as well, points of interest, neighborhood name, etc. It's basically like Google Maps here. So if we were going to, let's go to Cypress Hills. All right, I didn't know that, but it's in District 37. Zoom in there, and let's pick surface temperature for this one. So once again, you're introduced with a short, chock full of research paragraph here on why surface temperatures are so dangerous. So that's helpful just to be informed about the issue. So here, the darker the color, that really dark red, maroon color, that's where the excessive summertime surface temperatures are for this area. So this is the really dark area, the really hottest parts of the of East New York right here. And now I'm going to layer show rather a mirror image. So we do have also US data available. It's down here on the bottom. So we have data layers from race and ethnicity, poverty level, vehicle ownership, and commute mode as well. So I'm going to click on poverty level here. And there's a lot going on the screen here. So there's this collapse panel arrow here. When you collapse that, it lets the focus really show on the maps. And this just, I think, really perfectly illustrates a lot of those points I was making in the introduction, how a lot of the policy and planning decisions over the years, decades, and centuries have racist and classist origins. Because this map on the left shows where the hottest parts of the area are. And on the right, it shows households that are living below the poverty line. That mustard color is where the highest percentages are. And you really see that almost down on a block by block level, how those two different data layers mirror with each other. So it's really powerful. You also see that the box changed here. So City Council District 37, it ranks 9th out of 51 City Council districts for surface level temperatures. And it also, because I already checked off that additional US Census data layer, gives you that 20.5% of households in the City Council district live below the poverty line. Another great feature down here, pointing over on the left, it tells you who represents the district, gives you an external link to that council member and what neighborhoods it covers. You can quickly jump to community board level data as well. So, and I should mention too, you can type in different addresses or community board district numbers, but you can also just click on the map. So I want to show this other feature here that allows you to compare communities. So we have already District 37, and let's say I want to compare it to District 30 right next door. So right now I'm comparing districts 37 and 30. So this could be a really helpful tool. Let's imagine a fabricated scenario where you maybe found out that District 30 was going to get some cooling centers this summer because someone was making an argument that it's actually one of the hottest parts of the city. A larger portion of residents don't own ACs, there's higher poverty, and you didn't find that claim believable because you know the area. So this could be a really great tool here to show that in fact, District 37, by Councilmember Nurse's district is significantly hotter than District 30. And that the case that there is higher poverty in this other district also doesn't hold true. 5% of households in City Council District 30 live below the poverty level versus nearly 21% in District 37. And just to give a little bit of a different way to use this compare function, let's say we want to choose another neighboring district, District 34. And let's say that you work for Councilmember Nurse's district, and you want to pair up with a neighboring district, or you're looking for somebody to work on a bill to lower surface temperatures because you see that this is such a big problem for your district. So this is also a great way to kind of triangulate and look for how to, who to work with within your coalition, what kind of argument to make. On the bottom left here, whenever you're in community profile view and you've clicked or searched for a district already, you'll notice that there are 3 listed data layers. And these are the 3 most pressing data layers for that particular district in relation to the other council districts. So it's not saying that there aren't other issues or other things to work on in this district. But for these 15 data layers that we have, which data layers does this district rank most poorly on? So, in this fabricated scenario, if I'm still the council member, I work for Councilmember Nurse here in District 37, I see that the most pressing issues for these particular 15 data layers are bus lanes, surface temperature, and traffic injuries. But I'm working on the surface level temperature bill. I'm checking out the neighboring district to see, okay, the 3 most pressing issues in that district are bus lanes, tree canopy, and air pollution. So maybe this could be a helpful way to approach the council member or her staff in District 34 with a surface level temperature reducing bill from a tree canopy point of view, or when maybe your bill will be about tree canopies, and you can also make an argument about air pollution. And maybe that's the ability to point out to the council member or her staff that these are 2 data layers that her district ranks poorly on could be a winning argument to try to get that council member to work on a bill with you, to co-sponsor it, or maybe to find, since they're neighboring districts, ways to work together. And these data layers here, they're not static either. So you can also click on them, and you also have the ability to see how those two different districts rank on those issues. And once again, like I mentioned earlier, you have the ability to view the data on a community board level as well. So let's take a look at my former neighborhood in Hell's Kitchen, Community Board 4. And this could be, let me just bring back the panel. Let's say that you are working on a bill and looking for more information about Community Board 4. Maybe you want to pilot a low traffic neighborhood, or some of you might know it as a super block. So as now former resident of Hell's Kitchen, I know that a lot of folks don't own a car, but I don't know the exact percentage. So I can quickly drop down to vehicle ownership, and I see, okay, in this community board, my biases are right. 84.6% of households in this community board don't own a car. So that could be a helpful argument to make for this fabricated scenario of creating a low traffic neighborhood in Hell's Kitchen. Let's take a look at, I also don't think a lot of folks drive to work, so especially with that very low car ownership, and that holds out true too. Only 4% of residents within that community board commute by driving alone to work. And earlier I mentioned that there are, I'm going to remove the US Census data layer. At the top here, we're still in the globe view, so we're viewing the data on a map. But when you're in community profiles, you can also view the data via that histogram view that we saw at the very beginning of this live demo. And when you view the data via community profiles in this histogram view, the histograms are horizontal, they're not vertical in this view. And the first three histograms that will always be presented are going to be the three most pressing ones. So we're in Manhattan Community Board 4. The most pressing issue for this community board in relationship to the other community boards is that it has the slowest bus speeds. And you see that it ranks 59th out of 59 community boards for bus speeds. You also see that it's way out here on the left as well. It ranks very poorly on air pollution and also traffic volume. So those are three issues that I can point immediately to for why, in this fabricated scenario, why I think that the community board should vote for a low traffic neighborhood for the district. And once again, because we're in this histogram view, you can view these any of these data layers with solutions on the right side here. So as you click on the different histograms, the solutions change. And when you scroll down here on the bottom, you can add more data to see what other arguments you can make for your low traffic neighborhood idea for the community board. There's also this share functionality here, nothing groundbreaking. We know that every website has this. You can share on Facebook, other social, etc. You can copy the URL. But we were really thoughtful on what this copying of the URL meant. And we wanted to give full confidence to the user that whatever you are viewing on your screen at the moment that you are copying the URL, that you can have full confidence that whether you send it in a community board chat, if you email it to your mom, or you paste it into a tweet, that whoever clicks on that link will be viewing the same exact thing. So whether you're zoomed in on a neighborhood level, showing how loud Bay Ridge is by the highways, that exact URL is specific to exactly what you're viewing. If I'm viewing data here for making my case for why Hell's Kitchen should have a low traffic neighborhood in this fabricated scenario, I know that this URL here at the top will show exactly what I'm viewing right here to that next user. So that was also an important aspect. So that sharing capability having the trust with the data and showing the links. Once again, here you see where this data is coming from, and the ability to download it to give users that full confidence in linking it, knowing exactly where it came from, when it was last updated, when it was last uploaded to Spatial Equity NYC. And let me switch back here. Great. So like I mentioned earlier, Spatial Equity NYC is it's a continuation of NYC 25 by 25. And all of these solutions ladder up to our 25 by 25 campaign, which is, once again, TA's challenge to New York City's leaders to convert 25% of the current space for cars back to people. And we know that there is plenty of space out there to do that. New York City has 3 million parking spaces, which is 6.5 Central Parks worth of land. Is 6,300 miles of streets. So we have the space on our public streets to create spatial equity. We know from polling that New Yorkers want more space, even if it means less space for cars. So now we just need the political will to act, and that's what we're hoping Spatial Equity NYC will provide to users. So what's coming next? Well, Spatial Equity NYC is going to be an evergreen project that will continually update and improve and expand. We're already moving forward with version 2.0, already in discussions with MIT about version 3.0. And some of the features that you can expect are additional data layers. The city council districts got redistricted, so that data layer is going to change soon. There'll be additional political geography, so you'll be able to view the data on a borough level, by state assembly districts, by state senate districts, etc. We're going to, in this next version, have the data be refreshed and automated. So for example, the traffic fatality data layer we could have that updated on a daily or maybe on a weekly basis. And we're also looking to add more detail. So when you do zoom in, for instance, on the bike rack, the bike parking data layer, in future versions, you'll be able to see not just where there are more or fewer bike racks within a district, but you'll be able to see exactly where the bike racks are. So that could be helpful for hyperlocal campaigns. DOT, for example, or another agency is coming to redesign a street, and you see that there are no bike racks on that entire corridor. That could be very helpful to the public, to advocates, but also to that agency's staff as well. All right, any questions? So I see one question from Jacob. What was the process to normalize the data? So by normalizing the data, I mentioned this up top, but if you weren't here, we really wanted to make sure that you as a user have the ability to compare different districts. So especially with community boards, less so on the city council level, but still there are some differences. But especially in the community board level, there are huge variances in population and miles of streets and land area, etc. So it's a lot less useful to compare mileage of bus lanes or mileage of bike lanes, for example, between two different districts that have widely different areas that they cover, wildly different mileage. So to normalize it, to be able to say X percentage of streets in this district have a bus lane and X percent of districts in this other district have a bus lane. That way you're able to compare apples to apples and normalize the data. So that was a huge undertaking by the MIT team. So we, from Transportation Alternatives, we worked extremely closely with MIT on this project. And that was, they handled that side. And I should add too that there is an in-person session hosted by MIT tomorrow for Open Data Week. And they're really going to dive in on the more technical aspects of the website. Somebody asked, where on the website can I find information about data sources? So anytime you see the information icon, you can click on that and it'll take you straight to the back the website. And it'll give you when the data was last uploaded, when it was last updated by the source, and also a link to that raw data. But you can also yourself click on the bottom left anytime you're on the website. There's a more information tab, and that's where we answer a lot of questions of what is Spatial Equity NYC, why we built this, the sources for the data, and all the other fine print. Somebody asked here, Christina asked, what brings down surface level temperature? So this is a really important issue. Actually, heat is the #1 killer, natural disaster killer, both in New York City and the United States. It's not hurricanes, it's not flooding, it's the #1 natural disaster killer is actually heat. So it's a really important topic, especially for a heating climate and heating New York City. So there is excessive heat when there's an especially large amount of pavement, excessively wide streets, surface parking lots, when there are fewer trees, when there's less permeable surfaces, fewer parks. You can see a theme here. Asphalt is a great conductor of heat. So the less asphalt that we have and the more green spaces that we have, the lower those temperatures are. I saw that somebody raised their hand. If they want to unmute themselves and ask a question, you're more than welcome to do that too. So I see somebody asked here about how frequently the data gets updated. We haven't, this website went live in October, so it's current as of then. But a lot of the open data data sets only update once a year. So the bike lane data set and the bus lane data set, for example, only get updated in the late spring every year. We're never going to go in the back and press the scales and just add more mileage just because we really want to give users that full confidence that all of this data is straight from reliable sources, and it's never us pressing the scales in the background. So a lot of that actually relies on city agencies. So for those here, I ask and I beg to please update those data sets more often. I know that it is a lot of work, and I appreciate everything you do. But immediately at publishing time, our bus lane and bike lane map was already outdated by a few months because it was at the end of building season, and those open data sets got updated in late spring. But we are, for version 2.0, we are going to automate the data. So it also tells you when you click on that information icon when the data was last updated. And we're going to soon have the website pull the data automatically and refresh whenever it is updated. Somebody here asked why we decided to focus on community boards and city council districts. It's a really good question, and we've noticed, a lot of websites will map this data either just citywide or on a census block level or on a neighborhood level, and that can often be helpful. But especially from an advocacy organization, our thinking here was that there are people directly responsible for those districts. When you see that your city council district ranks first for highest asthma rates, there is exactly someone in their staff that you can send an email to or tweet or go to their office and point that out and make a case for why asthma rates have to go down. On the neighborhood level, that very rarely exists. On the census block level, that never exists. So to empower the users to have this data on a city council level, and almost all of these data layers are ranked and visualized and presented on a city council level for the first time. A lot of them have already been done on a community board level, but on a city council level, this is a first for many. So we wanted that direct connection. So that's why you see somebody who is directly responsible for the district. We visualize the data and the issue, and we also offer solutions with tons of citable research, all in a one-stop shop place. So like I mentioned earlier, we will be adding additional political geographies this year. Somebody asked if other cities are doing anything similar.
You have two people with their hands up.
Oh, great.
Larry and Kendra. Oh, hi. I just ended up typing this in the chat as well, if that's preferable. But I was just thinking, I really appreciate the sort of push for spatial equity, a la the importance of pedestrian space use. But the thing that came to mind with the usage of the example of Hell's Kitchen when you were on the map is that if I were a policymaker, one of my immediate responses would be, well, okay, obviously lots of people don't own or use cars there, but it's a busy commercial district and lots of car usage is associated in the area with the like business purposes. And so I'm curious if, there's a way slash path forward in terms of building in some of the like factors around importance of roadways for commercial purposes to integrate into the analysis with the spatial equity map, and B, if you have thoughts about from an advocacy perspective how to integrate, at least pending those mapping technical updates being made, how to sort of engage that conversation considering the ambiguity around the importance of commercial use of roadways. You're muted.
Thank you. Thanks for that. We're over 3 years into this and I still catch myself muted. Thanks. Yeah, I was just saying that it's a really great question and complex. And, I do want to be cognizant of not, New York City each neighborhood is so completely different. As a former Hell's Kitchen resident, I hear a lot of what you're saying, but I also don't, from an advocacy organization, we don't want to go in and tell any community that, like how to prioritize that commercial traffic or the truck traffic or how important each of those are. So this is just simply giving the data to those users to come to their own conclusions and to empower them and to let them use it. Because as a former Hell's Kitchen resident, I know that those avenues are in some parts 5 lanes wide. And what's beneficial to those residents. Our streets are so overbuilt. It's not like we're even close being in equilibrium. It's 76% of our streets are dedicated for storing and moving cars, when such a small minority actually get around by cars. So I don't think that there's any danger of disrupting that. And but yeah, thank you for that question. There will be additional data layers where we're looking to add like a subway map data layer. That's how a lot of New Yorkers view New York City when looking at it from a spatial point of view. But we are also considering other ones such as truck routes as well.
Hi, this is Kinjia Hinchlin. In the interest of our very limited time that's left, I'll just say that this is a very interesting tool that you built here. And I have a question about the data. Specifically, I work for the health department, so I'm looking at the asthma data, which links back to the environment and health data portal, which does not provide the asthma data at the geographies that you're presenting it at. So I'm just wondering, without getting into the methodology that you might have used to arrive at the estimates you're presenting, do you communicate with the data stewards of the data that you're retrieving and repurposing in your site? So did you communicate with the health department, for example, about that metric?
Yeah, that's definitely something that was more on MIT's side. So I would, for those who really want to get technical on that, I would highly recommend going to Nico's presentation tomorrow. And he can talk more about that. We were in communication with, definitely within our coalition, there were 200 plus organizations, unions, nonprofits, advocacy groups. We were in communication with some of the agencies. I will admit, we built this extremely fast. Lightning speed, if anyone knows how long it takes to build websites like this, we built this in 3 months. In its future versions, 2.0 and 3.0, there's a lot of lessons learned, and we're going to do significantly more outreach with the agencies. I think that's a really great point.
Well, I think I'm concerned about the reliability of what you're showing, because that's, to translate from one geography to another is not that straightforward. So
no, yeah, definitely not.
Maybe you can take this offline.
No, I appreciate that pushback, and I would love to be challenged on that. We'll yeah, definitely make sure if you could direct message me your email address, I'd love to get in contact. But that was a huge undertaking, and that's why so many of these data layers don't exist on the city council level or on any other level. So we went to the best visualization team that we knew in the country at MIT, and they really painstakingly put this together. So I see that we are right at time. So I will drop my email address and other contact information in the chat, including a URL to the report card, which really dives into the details of the website, and a website to TA where you can follow us on social and sign up for our newsletter. Thank you.